What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleash, the weekly panel discussion show. As always, we have a fantastic panel with just a slight change, but welcoming first-time guests. I've been, cool with this guy for quite some time. We were working together on a podcast for Collider Sports. It was called MMA Takedown. If you guys remember that, we had at least I had like a 9-week run on that show with him. It was pretty cool. We stayed in touch since, and now finally we got the man, the VP of production at Collider, Mr. Dennis Tzeng. Dennis, good to see you, buddy. How you going, man?
Yeah, good to see you. We got to catch up a little bit before we started recording. It's been a while. It's a whole year and a half of pandemic craziness, and now we're kind of finally starting to get things back to normal, semi-normal, I guess.
Yeah. Of course, and semi-normal. I mean, the semi becomes because like there's a world outside of combat sports. There's nothing normal about combat sports, so we are entrenched in weirdness here on the Walkout Network. So, of course, the panel every week is anchored by the man with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of SureDog.com. Also, my good friend, Mr. Jay Petrie. Jay, what's going on?
This weekend was very interesting. And by that I mean it wasn't, which in itself is kind of fascinating to me. That I write stat pieces for SureDog and look around and go, boy, oh boy, what a desolate wasteland! Like, what do you write about when hooray, Thiago Santos went the distance with Johnny Walker? Or, it's fun to pull out memorable parts of this event, but there's big news on the horizon that I'm sure we're going to talk about that's much more important. But I got to get this out of the way because here's my stat of the week, and its title, if there were a title, would be nice, because the title is the stat is 69. So Carol Rosa, who fought Bethe Correia this weekend, is a member of Piranha Vale in Brazil. Jessica Andrade, Priscila Cachoeira, a whole bunch of women are in that camp. They all walk out to the same song. It's the theme song of their camp, like it's PRVT, something about their camp will rule the world, essentially. So their camp has a theme song and they walk out to it. Well, their winning percentage when they walk out to that song is 69%. So nice.
I like those odds. I like those odds a lot. All right. Very interesting stat of the week. A good chance to flex my immaturity, but we got to get really mature really quickly because we do have some serious news to report. This morning, Eric Cowell of My MMA News broke a story that we hate to hear in combat sports. And Justin Thornton, he is a 24-fight veteran, mixed martial arts. He's competed against some UFC vets like Chase Sherman and Walt Harris. I think he concluded his MMA career with a 6-18 record, if I'm not mistaken. Right. But he most recently competed at Bare Knuckle Fighting Championships 20, I believe it was in August. He lost in the first 18 seconds via really, really brutal knockout. And it is with great sadness that we have to say that this man passed away this morning as a direct result of the injuries that he took in that bout. Fellas, I mean, I know, I hate to start things out like this. We try to have a fun show here, but of course this takes precedent over any other combat sports news. I mean, the loss of a life. We continually talk about fighters risking their lives when they step in the cage or the mat or the ring for our entertainment, and here we are face to face with that reality. Jay, I'll start with you, man. What was your first reaction when you heard that news?
Well, I've seen every BKFC event live for worse or for worse. It's an entertaining spectacle for the most part. It's MMA adjacent, so it's still boxing rules. Like there's nothing other than stand up with your fists. There's no back fists really. I mean, somebody tried. No anything else like that. But it is MMA adjacent in that a lot of fighters have decided, I'm getting a little old for this. I'm going to go fight without gloves on, like Bigfoot Silva decides, I've taken a lot of damage over the years. I'm going to go fight where somebody can hit me in the face without hand wraps. So it'll, probably hit harder or whatever may happen. So it's been kind of a running joke that we've used. BKFC was illegal in the United States for 100 years. It was banned, outright banned. I mean, we're talking just we don't want to deal with it. And it came back in 2018, and it took 20 events for something in the U.S. And one in Mexico to go really horribly wrong. And it's hard to look at this situation because if you see the knockout, we'll attach or include something like that, like a link to Twitter or something, to see the actual knockout when Justin went down and he landed, face on his face, and you could see his neck kind of tweak. It was a very unfortunate situation that could have happened had they been wearing gloves. Like this is a really nasty knockout that just happened to be without gloves on. And this is an instant moment for the sport that makes people go, I don't think I'm going to want to sanction this anymore. And I'm curious how states are going to react to this because it was a BK knockout that ended in a fighter's demise. But there's something I have to say. In addition to all this, my heart goes out to Thornton and his family. My heart goes out to Dylan Kleckler, who's the one who knocked him out. That's I can't imagine what that's like. This is a guy in Dylan Kleckler who fought him back in 2013 MMA, knocked him out in a minute. So BKFC said, let's run this back without gloves on. That's cool. And this was the end result. This was a tragic situation, no matter how you slice it. And it came out by a tweet. Just, hey, I heard this thing happened here. This is something on Facebook, and then Facebook exploded, so we couldn't verify, look on this to see what happened. BKFC has to get in front of this. They have to, this is that watershed moment. This is the moment that if this happened in the UFC, if say Gaetano Perillo in the last UFC card, the Belgian gentleman who got knocked out by Douglas Silva, the Andrade, if he passed away, UFC would not tweet it. It wouldn't be, Chris Costello tweeting this randomly on a Monday morning. This would be a major statement. Whatever the PR muster it should be that. It shouldn't be Eric Kowal, who runs a media outlet and also is the press guy for BKFC, kind of tweets just I heard about this. That can't be. This is too important of a situation to be treated like this. I'm sorry that I'm ranting for so long, but the whole situation has been handled wrong from the beginning, from the matchmaking. This is a gentleman who's 6-18, fighting an 11-1 fighter. Just the specific matchmaking alone, you go, I don't think this should be sanctioned. This guy knocked him out horribly. It's going to happen again, and it happened again. Justin Thornton is the gentleman who fought Lex McMahon, 50-year-old CEO of an organization who wanted to try MMA. They brought in Justin Thornton, and he got choked out in a minute. Everything about this was wrong. Everything from the way it was put together to the way it was handled today. It currently, at the taping of this, is about 4:30 on the East Coast, and there has been no official word from BKFC other than statements to various media outlets. Say something, please. We need to hear something. Dennis, you work in a major media corporate conglomerate that has PR teams that can handle this. Is this the kind of thing that a company should get behind immediately and handle? What do you think about this whole ordeal?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I feel like it's a very unfortunate situation. He got that, I think it was like a spinal cord injury, and they had to set up like a GoFundMe for him and left him paralyzed. And then, sadly he passed, was it today or yesterday? I don't know. But I think it's something that should be tackled head on. BKFC is not as big as the UFC, so it's sad to say it's like going under the radar more than something like the UFC, and fans and probably the UFC, the company itself, would probably try and distance themselves and say, well, we have the 4-ounce gloves, so this is the safety precaution or measure that we have that would prevent something like this. And so we know that's not going to be, sadly, it's not going to be the last time we hear of something like this. And who knows, the next time it may be in the UFC, and what kind of questions that's going to bring up. I don't know about BKFC's. I know you said it was banned before. Is it only allowed to be operated in? Because they do all their stuff in Florida, right? Other states.
Yeah,
like
pretty
5 or
much
6 states.
the fringe states like
Wyoming, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama,
I'm
Nebraska.
Has Texas. I think South Dakota hosted an event once or something, but they don't operate in a California, in a New Jersey, and Nevada.
Exactly.
I would expect
there's nothing in Las Vegas or anything like that. Yeah.
Right. You know what? I will stand on this platform as often as is necessary and will throw all sorts of shade toward Dave Feldman, the president of BKFC, because I think fight promoters in general are scummy people, or if they're not scummy people, they dabble in scummery very, very much so as a part of the function of their job. It is sort of a ghoulish profession in a lot of ways. And I think he is on the more reprehensible end of that spectrum, from some of the eyewitness accounts of things that have occurred at his events that may not necessarily be public information. But it's hard for me to point the finger at the promotion for this particular incident for a couple of reasons. Jay, I think you're absolutely spot on as far as the response from the organization. This is piss poor of a response, and I certainly hope that they're doing more behind the scenes than they're doing in public, doing more behind the scenes to make things right with his family as far as trying to cover funeral expenses or something to ease their suffering just a bit, or at least attempt to. But the incident itself is not a result of the rule set of,
Right.
of what BKFC is. This is, as you said, Jay, this is something that could have happened with gloved combat, and this is something that we've seen to some extent in glove combat before. How many fighters have we heard about having injuries from a fall that they took from being knocked out? One of the most visceral knockouts in MMA history comes courtesy of Gabriel Gonzalez on Mirko Cro Cop. He blew out his knee on that fall, in a very, very ugly scene. If you look at a freeze frame of it, there was why don't I want to say there was someone in PFL recently who got knocked out and hurt their neck when they face planted. And I'm sorry I can't remember the fighter's name, but that story seems somewhat familiar to me. This is something that can happen in any rule set where someone can go unconscious. The gloves, not or lack thereof, had nothing to do with this, and in fact, probably could have been worse in a glove combat situation, in my opinion, because you're going to have a harder punch that lands or more frequency of punches that land and can cause this sort of thing. You think about a lot of the deaths that have occurred in boxing. We just had one, maybe a month ago, a young lady in Mexico. I think she's like 18 and passed away. Those tend to happen from an accumulation of damage that, a sustained beating that takes place over, 10 rounds or so, and then someone just succumbs to their injuries. And we've seen cases of fighters who have made it to the final bell and then, pass out at some point later on and never wake up from a coma, or leave the ring under their own power only to collapse in the dressing room. We've heard of these stories, but they happen in different ways. This was a freak occurrence. This is really a freak occurrence. And as far as the matchmaking is concerned, Jay, I do agree that matchmaking can be problematic in a lot of ways. When you look at his record, he was finished in the first round in like his last 5 fights or something like that. But this is sort of the model that has built fighters up. And, this is what boxing has done forever. And a lot of times we call for this in MMA to an extent, maybe not to this crazy of an extent, but we call for tune-up fights in mixed martial arts. I mean, when we get to the Bellator main event between MVP and Douglas Lima, I'm going to talk about the tune-up fights and benefits or pros and cons or whatever the case may be. This is an unfortunate incident, obviously, but I can't point the finger at BKFC for this in action, but damn sure can point the finger at them for how they've responded to this tragic incident. So definitely want to send our deepest condolences to Justin Thornton, his family's loved ones, everyone affected by this tragedy. And it sucks that this is, you know, a byproduct of the combat sports that we love. So, all right, fellas.
Do you think? I mean, knowing Dave, I mean, you touched on Dave Feldman, and I'll touch on that a little bit more. How many thoughts do you think entered his head before the Tiger King, Joe Exotic, I'm never going to financially recover from this came to mind? Like, do you think this was any sort of a financial concern of we're not going to make it, more than, oh my gosh, this event happened?
I definitely think his first thoughts were not of, you know, Thornton and his family. That there was more about the future of the organization. And as terrible as it sounds, it makes some sense because he still has a livelihood. My daughter pressed the mute button again. You know, as terrible as it may sound, he still has a business to run. There's still employees to be paid. There's still things that company wants to do, and it's still a money-making enterprise. So I'm not too surprised by that notion. I just know that for a gentleman who was spotted chastising fighters for not leaving their blood and guts in the ring and threatening to cut their purses as a result. His first concern is not fighter safety. His first concern is not the well-being of the people that make him money. So take that for what you will, because I wouldn't be surprised if Dana or Scott Coker or De La Hoya or Ludabella or any other fight promoter is guilty of the same thing. He just probably does it in a more outlandish and, you know, crude way. So any final thoughts about this whole situation, gentlemen, before we move things along here?
I guess the only thing is, you know, so far UFC has been pretty lucky not to have this happen yet, but it's sad to say, but eventually it's you know, the chances are it's going to happen one of these days. There's nothing in the UFC MMA rule set that's going to prevent something like that. It's a numbers thing, you know?
Right. I mean, so. You're right. Like the UFC is extremely fortunate that something like this has not happened before. Like, and this has happened in other MMA organizations, albeit less regulated ones. We had one championships, weight cut death. I mean, we had Aspen Ladd damn near die on the scale this weekend, and I'm sure we'll be getting to that before this show wraps. So think about Rose Namajunas losing her belt to Jessica Andrade. If her head tilts 3 centimeters to the right, we're having a different conversation here. So this is a matter of time that something happens in a major mixed martial arts organization that Americans care about. It is only a matter of time. Think back to Kevin Randleman's fight against Fedor Emelianenko. You know, we've been this close many times. And
Big Nom versus Bob Sapp when he slammed him on his neck.
Exactly. Like this is scarily close to happening on a regular basis. Even though I would say an event by event basis, this is scarily close to happening all the time. So just keep that in mind before you pass judgment, you know. All right, fellas, let's move things along here. We had 2 major main events in mixed martial arts this weekend that
they happened,
and they've happened to disappoint quite a few people, namely Thiago Santos and Johnny Walker at the UFC Vegas 38 event, the fight night at the Apex Center. and the rematch between MVP and Douglas Lima and Bellator across the pond in London. I'm going to start with you on this one, Dennis. Which main event disappointed you the most?
Yeah, I'd have to say for me easily the Santos versus Walker. I think I was just expecting more. I mean, with Lima MVP with the rematch, obviously you knew MVP was going to be more careful this time, and that it was going to go longer than the first fight. But it's not like that one was like fireworks off the bat, anyways. So I wasn't expecting like some sort of war to happen out of that. Did I expect it to be more exciting than it was? Yes, but it wasn't as bad as Santos versus Walker, which I thought was going to be some sort of fireworks, explosions in the first round or two with, someone being KO'd. And it just ended up being this kind of very low output, tactical, very safe fight from both of them. And so, I was, that was the one I was disappointed most with.
Jay, which one disappointed you the most?
This weekend would be called disappointment weekend just by everything that transpired. Like, not just the main events, but the co-main events as well for both cards just dragged, and everybody went, oh boy, now we're just kind of going through the paces at this point. Santos versus Walker should have had more than 100 significant strikes land if it went 25 minutes. That just seems like a pretty easy thing considering both of these guys are strikers. But if Johnny Walker had gotten the nod, I would have said it would have been a more disappointing result, because the only thing worse than a really boring fight where nothing happens is a really boring fight where the wrong guy won. And I had Lima winning against MVP to the degree that I can see people going, yeah, MVP won it because of the knockdowns, but first of all, there weren't that many knockdowns because every time MVP landed that big right hand, there was a shoulder check. So you couldn't really tell if it was just simply him bull rushing Lima and he landed the punch and then shoved him over, or he dropped him and pushed him on the way down. It's hard to say, but it happened enough times where I go, maybe one or two knockdowns, but there weren't 3 or 4 like people were claiming. So if it had gone... If Walker had won, I would have been a little more disappointed. But at the same time, we gotta get Johnny Walker out of SBG Ireland, right? Like, that is my biggest takeaway from these main events. And I hope that Ant, you seem to be motivated to respond, so please do.
Absolutely. I agree with you guys about the Santos and Johnny Walker fight being quite a tepid affair. I mean, I think when you combine those two names on paper, it just sounds like pure fireworks, pure explosion. Like, this is just violence upon violence. And I've seen them multiple times, like, fight live, like up close, and it's like the sheer violence of Johnny Walker landing that flying knee on Misha Serkinov and then dislocating his shoulder in the celebration just will forever stand out in some of my memories, being cage side for events. And Thiago Santos, like, actually like giving John Jones some go at certain points. It was pretty crazy to watch. I was there for his Kevin Holland fight as well. Like that's a very frightening man, just overall. But good Lord, they did not combine for anything more than a rather pedestrian chess match. Yeah, get him out of SPG. Get him out of SPG. Like, get Johnny Walker far away from that camp. Like, they've just sucked away all the fun out of, like, the most fun fighter in the past, like, 10 years in the UFC. But I don't think that Lima and MVP was very disappointing. I'm gonna say I was actually kind of intrigued by the fight. The more disappointing thing about that fight was that it was a 3-rounder.
Good point.
That's the more disappointing thing to me. But they fought. They had. Now maybe this is the worst analogy possible, because I think I'm the only person on earth who likes the Woodley and Thompson rematch. I really enjoyed that fight. But it's the same reasons why I enjoyed this one, because it was the anticipation. They know exactly the level of violence each one is capable of unleashing, and there's a tension in trying to figure the other one out with this knowledge. And it only works for
the second round, man. When he pushed him, when he kicked his leg out and went for that uppercut.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, that uppercut was just like grazed the tip of his nose or something. Like, it was like, oh my god, this is nuts. The anticipation made it that exciting to me. Okay. And quite frankly, Jay, you're gonna be mad at me, but I think MVP won that fight.
It's okay. No, it's all right.
The third round was the only definitive round, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I thought on the knockdowns that Lima should have lost that fight. Even if they were the result of like a bull rush and a push,
it was still a significant strike that had landed to
exactly. And we're not talking about boxing rules where it has to be a clean punch that puts someone down. Like in mixed martial arts, you can get somebody to the floor in a variety of ways, and a punch and a push sounds just as legitimate as a punch, just as legitimate as a takedown if it's hard enough. So I'm in favor of MVP winning. Now, if they do a third fight, this better be a 5-rounder. And that's all I'll have to say about that.
Didn't MVP say that? He said he's more interested in a 5-round rematch with Lima than he is for the belt.
Yes, he did.
It makes total sense too, because it seemed like Lima was figuring things out and the tide was turning, and MVP still, he's a competitor. He wants that challenge. I'll say one thing though, getting back to the tune-up fights that we mentioned before, this fight made a good case for tune-up fights in mixed martial arts. We have been clowning the opponents that have been trotted out in front of MVP since he lost to Lima. Like, it's been plumbers, it's been cab drivers, it's been pizza delivery guys, it's been everybody but, well-experienced mixed martial artists that have been put in front of him. But man, he looked like he had a gazillion tons more experience against Douglas Lima this time than he did the first time. What do you say, fellas?
I can see
for me, it was just like he just seemed more ready to fight because he's just been more active. And then, when I think about MVP, he's kind of like one of the only few names that actually gets tune-up fights. I know it happens more so in Bellator than the UFC, because in the UFC, some of the bigger names out there could have benefited from tune-up fights, like Conor, Ronda Rousey, but they were too big where it was like, no, you have to basically fight the best of the best, or otherwise there's no point in fighting. But with MVP, it just seems to, one, bolster his confidence. And remember, he's coming off a knockout, right? Being knocked out for the first time in his career. So, you want to be able to go in there, even if it's not against the same person, and then be able to just get that time in there, and then just get your confidence. Like, okay, I can do this. I'll be more careful next time. And I feel like that kind of shone through in the fight. And by the way, I actually had MVP winning as well, but it wasn't it wasn't a robbery though. Like, it wasn't like if Lima had won, it would have been fine. And a lot of people complain too about MVP and his wrist control from the bottom. I'm like, well, that's not his problem. What is he supposed to do? Let him get punched? Of course you're going to grab his wrist.
I was impressed by that.
Yeah.
I wasn't mad about it. I'm like, why can't more guys do that? It showed me, oh my God, MVP has incredible grip strength to keep himself from because Douglas Lima, when he gets on top, he will elbow you in the face if he can. And he only got like one or two.
Like he really couldn't do a whole lot of damage. That to me looked like some sort of evolution from, working a bottom game. Like, you don't see close guard in MMA. You don't see very much, at least not from anybody who's experienced and kind of knows what they're doing. Like, the close guard is just abandoned.
Except for Miguel Torres.
Yeah. Miguel Torres, like, how long ago was that? like the bottom game has just evolved to where it's not a whole lot people are doing in mixed martial arts anymore. Just going for super grip on the wrist and negating damage like that sounds like the new age version of just begging for the stand-up. And not bad if you're not technically adept enough to get up, or you've got someone on top of you who's just going to control position and out wrestle you. you might as well not get elbowed in the head while they're doing that. So kudos to MVP for that.
It's a really good point that Dennis raised, though, about the UFC not really having space for its top fighters to get tune-ups, or even just like, okay, let's take a break for a second. Like Thiago Santos. Okay, he won his way up. He won 4 in a row. He knocked out Jan Blachowicz and fought John Jones. Fought John Jones, tooth and nail, bitter end, blew his leg in half. And his next fight is against Glover Teixeira. And we know how that fight went. He blasted Teixeira. Teixeira hits the desperation of all desperation takedowns and finishes him off later in the fight as he gets tired. And then, he's lost 2 in a row. Let's put him up against wonderkin Alexander Rakic. Oh, boy, that's going to happen. Rakic, handled him. And we go, okay. Thiago Santos, former title challenger, hammer on his chest, hits people with his nickname of Hammer, smashes people's face up. Let's give him a top 10 guy in Johnny Walker because he's lost 3 fights in a row. So, yes, there's just no wiggle room. You look at a guy like Jim Miller who fights every name is going to be at least somebody frustrating. Dustin Poirier's lineup is just killer after killer after killer. Michael Venom Page, I believe, is the number 2 welterweight in the division, I think, according to their their rankings. And I don't think he fought a single ranked opponent in his 5-fight win streak before fighting Lima, because that can happen. Whereas the number 2 welterweight in the UFC right now is Gilbert Burns, and he's fighting Wonder Boy? There's no tough outs in that business. And the Bellator can afford to give him that. But it also makes you think, is Douglas Lima going to get a fun fight, a London cab driver for his next opponent because of this? Is he going to get it? This is a real question. Is Lima going to be afforded the tune-up fight after losing that, or is he going to be thrust into a Neiman Gracie fight or something like that?
That's a good question.
Because Dennis, you mentioned MVP is one of those few fighters who was afforded those tune-up fights. Is Lima? I don't think so.
The thing is, it's really going to depend on how much Bellator values the presence of Douglas Lima now. Because this is his 3rd loss in a row, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
He no longer holds the belt. He's still one of the main faces of the organization. So if they want to get him on the right track to boost him up again and hopefully go for another title run, they better put a tune-up in front of him. I just don't know, because he doesn't have that same sort of marquee value that an MVP has.
I think they're going to put him up against like a Logan Storley or something. Like this is
build someone else off of his back. That's a very, very strong possibility. It'll be one thing, I think, if this were a title loss, but now he's 1 fight removed from holding the belt, 2 losses from the belt. They might just move on, and it's not like he's getting any younger. But then that makes me think of some of the other tune-up questions here. Like for MVP, like would he have looked better if he had gone through some sort of war with Koreshkov, or
that's a real question
on the way to Lima? Like probably not. Like the experience might be helpful, but maybe that experience would have worn away at his chin, worn away at some of his athleticism, given him some injuries or something that prevented him to train appropriately, like or chipped away at his confidence in a different way. So there's so many different angles to approach this. I'm very curious as to what Bellator does with both of these men now. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a 3rd fight, because I think they both want that. And it does make sense because there isn't a whole lot else for them to do. It would give a lot of closure.
Do you really want to see Amasov against MVP?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think either one of them really wants to see anyone but the other person again. And Bellator should want to put this one together again. Exactly. Make it a 5-rounder. Please. All right, fellas. So another major story that developed over the weekend, we had some surefire fuckery. Holland and Daukaus, what an entertaining bout between the Unified Rules and promotional employees. Kevin Holland found himself knocked out and submitted in the same fight, walks away without another loss on his record. you talk about resilience in the line of fire, but let's put the attention on referee Dan Miragliotta and the Nevada Athletic Commission. Did they make the right call in making this a no contest?
For my opinion, it's a yes and no question or yes and no answer, because what should have happened is, as soon as the accidental headbutt happened, it should have been called a no contest. It should have been stopped. The problem is that they let it go, and then Daukaus submitted Holland. So like in his mind, it's like, okay, well, he was good enough to continue, so I was able to finally submit him. But if you do actually on the level watch the fight and see what actually happens, like, no, I mean, that definitely affected the outcome, right? Because it wasn't just like, oh, he got knocked down. He got knocked out. Like, he was out for like a second or two. So yeah, it's just one of those bad situations where the right call didn't happen at the right time, and so therefore now it looks kind of, I don't know, suspect or fishy or just wrong. So it just depends on, do you want to give Kevin Holland that L on his record or not? And they're going to rematch anyways.
It's an excellent point you raise about the last result feeling almost corrective. Like, oh, we made a mistake here, so let's rectify this by giving an in-cage no contest after consulting with Herb Dean and the rest of the Athletic Commission and Mark Ratner, who isn't he a VP of Regulatory Affairs for the UFC? Yes, I know he worked for the commission, but he is a UFC employee.
Yeah. And Sean Shelby was part of that conversation.
I think there was a certain
too.
Matchmaker that was involved in the discussion, the commission-based discussion, where UFC employees are saying words that aren't, what did you just say, that are, here, let me add my opinion to the regulatory discussion, which that bothered me more than anything. I mean, yes, Dennis nailed it. Miragliotta should have called the no contest, clash of heads, go down, he's out. Like, we saw Kevin, you could see Holland's eyes roll back in his head when he limply fell face first down to the ground. He recovered, whether he woke himself up hitting the face on the floor, whatever may have happened, kicked him back into action. So Miragliotta did err in that situation, but not saying, time, hey, wait a second, hey, let's not do that. But he owned up to it. I guess it made me feel a little better that he at least explained it by accident. Like, I don't think the microphones were supposed to pick up what they were saying.
Yeah, Herb Dean tried to whisper into the live
right
mic.
Into the microphone, and it just so happened. But I was okay hearing that Miragliotta give his take on it. I was going to, however, Holland started moving and defending himself, so I thought, well, he can't be knocked out if he's doing that. So I get that perspective in a live flurry. In the span of 2 seconds, a guy goes from clunk to and he's just trying to scramble in some way. But the clash of heads affected the fight, period. So probably the result should have been a win for Daukaus, later overturned to a no contest, if you want to get technical. But I'm okay with this result as it stood now, because at least it was transparent enough. And considering the Nevada State Athletic Commission is gravitating away from transparency, at least being part of it felt like being part of the process, publicized, or at least accidentally publicized, made me feel a little better with how things turned out.
I'm inclined to agree with both of you in a lot of ways. I'm most encouraged by the honesty and the self-reflection of Dan Miragliotta. We continually point to judges and referees not being accountable for the mistakes they make in the page. Yeah. I mean, he revels in his mistakes, or can you call them mistakes when you're just an idiot? I don't know. But like the officials tend to just have this air of invincibility. What we say goes, and you can appeal, but it doesn't mean anything because we're going to do what we want to do. And we've seen this time and time again. We've seen bad decisions. We've seen poor calls by the referee. We've seen a lot of different things happen that have negatively affected the careers of plenty of fighters. Dan Miragliotta went against that grain and said, hey, I made a mistake. I don't like the way he corrected it, but he admitted he made a mistake. I think the better course of action, like Jay said, would be to declare it a win for Daukaus and then have it overturned in appeal. Mergliata could do his due diligence on that by testifying in favor of a no contest. I think having the officials admit to mistakes just makes things so much smoother. And I think for once, like one of the rare times where an appeal actually would have worked, especially with the referee who was in charge officiating at that moment saying, hey, I made a mistake. It should have been this. But I think in the moment, if you're going to let the action go, you got to let the action go, because if we were talking about Kevin Holland, finding an arm bar in there and he gets declared a winner, this fight is not going to be questioned. It's going to be looked at. Oh, wow, Kevin Holland he's so resilient. And we'd be praising Mergliata for letting it go because, hey, it was an accident. Let's just keep it going. We got to be consistent. We have to be consistent. And I think that would have been the surest path to some level of consistency.
And if I add one last thing, having it going through the formal appeal process, a testimony, the facts come together, presented in front of the commission, it would establish precedent, which we need to be able to have the commission and other states look back at Nevada. Nevada is obviously the bellwether of how most of the unified rules and everything goes, to be able to look back and say, okay, here's a situation when a very renowned, famed, popular, whatever word you want to use to describe Dan Mergliata, not only admits to a mistake, but says, this is how I handled it, this is how it should be handled, and this is how we go forward. So I think that being able to point to that would have been more beneficial. So here's to hoping that the In-Cage can also set for that precedent.
Yeah. And yeah, a legal precedent. Thank you for our resident lawyer for adding that in. But then also, dude, removing the stigma of officials admitting to mistakes.
Yeah.
Remove the stigma. People make mistakes.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So, damn, I love having a lawyer on the panel. That's what's up. All right, fellas, it's time to break out your seasoning salt, your paprika, little butter for the pan, and whatever else you like to flavor your food, because we're going to ask the age-old question, how's Taste My Crow? What picks did you get completely wrong, or just events that just didn't quite go the way that you thought they would? Jay, I'll begin with you. How's Taste My Crow this week?
I did all right with picks. I think I got 8 or 9 right of the fight card. I didn't have a lot of glaring bad ones beyond. Okay, I did have an ugly one. I thought Mr. Serkinov was going to handle his performance better than he did. Now, I'm pretty sure I had Serkinov beat, expected that he would beat Krzysztof Jotko. Serkinov is a killer be killed guy. This is a guy who'd only been gone the distance like twice or something like that. He has Peruvian neckties. He gets cracked by flying knees. So it's a live by the sword, die by the sword kind of guy. And when he moved to 185, first, second, and third of all, I thought that was a stupid idea. This is a guy who walks around with 4% body fat at 205. Where's that going? But I guess you can ask Impa Kasanganay, who dropped from 185 to 170, already carved out of steel at 185. But Serkinov looked fine on the scales, and I was very surprised by it. I expected him to be kind of drawn out or whatever. He looked all right. But the performance, you could tell. You could tell he didn't quite have the steam to do the things he normally would do well. And it worked against him, and he lost the fight to Jotko. A very, I don't want to say winnable fight, because some of the guys to beat Jotko lately, I think, are Sean Strickland in the past several years. So Jotko is back on the rise again after his tumultuous runs of, I'm going to get out there and smear people and then lose 3 fights in a row. I thought Serkinov was the kind of guy who would get back on track, and it didn't. And this weight cut, he needs to go back up to 205.
Not a bad one there. Dennis, how's Taste My Crow this week? What picks are you regretting in hindsight?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do a ton of picks, but the one that I definitely got wrong, I mean, it's just funny because I got the winner right. I just got the way that it was going to happen wrong, which was Thiago Santos. I was like, looking at Johnny Walker's last few fights, even the one he won against Ryan Spann, it looked like it was very easy to, get him wobbled, to to get him doing the funky chicken dance. And so I was expecting, Thiago Santos hits hard. I mean, really hard. So I expected like any number of any punches would have wobbled Johnny Walker, and that just Santos didn't throw as much as I thought he was going to, and he didn't connect as much as I thought. But even the ones he did connect, Johnny Walker seemed to wear them pretty well, at least much better than I expected. I thought, one of those, and he'd be like wobbling all over the place and then get KO'd. So that was the one that I definitely missed on.
Was that the fourth round where he landed that big right hand?
That's exactly what I was about to say. And I'm like,
good Lord.
Whoa, he got a chin on him.
I mean, you're talking about like this is like Corey Anderson knocked him out, and Corey Anderson is not known as a heavy hitter at all.
Power punching Corey Anderson, all right.
Yeah, but Thiago Santos lands a flush one, gets his whole body weight, turns his hips and everything, and he just ate it like it was crow. My house tastes my crow comes courtesy of Nico Price and Alex Oliveira. I'm not surprised Nico Price won. I'm not surprised that it ended up being quite an entertaining fight. But I am surprised that Alex Oliveira didn't make any just blatantly stupid mistakes the whole time, and Nico Price didn't do anything weird. Like it was a run of the mill like action fight.
It was so normal.
It was like, wow, there were no like weird angle up kicks. There were no sort of just
spinning back elbow turned into a right hand with a switch kick behind it,
which would then transition into giving up your back to get choked out or something like that. Nothing bizarre like that happened. It was just a fun fight. So, thanks, gentlemen. That was cool. That was cool. All right, let's move things on here to shallow cuts. So we're gonna let me break out the timer. 30 seconds to answer a couple questions here. I will do the duty of assigning some questions. Although Jay, just to make things fun, Jay, I guess you could just give me one at random to start, and we'll go from there.
I will give you one at random to start, and the one I'll give you is the one you don't want to answer. And that, okay, so there's not a lot happens in terms of free agency, but PFL somehow just suddenly scooped former Bellator featherweight champion Julia Budd. So Julia Budd, whose only losses are to what?
Nunes,
Chris Cyborg, Amanda Nunes, and Ronda Rousey, is going over to PFL to fight in their 155 pound division. Is this the well? There's a couple things. Is this the sign that okay, they're keeping Kayla Harrison? And if that's the case, can Budd be the one? Go.
I think it's a good chance that this is a sign that Kayla Harrison sticks around because other than that, she has to go to the UFC or she has to go to Bellator in order to find the top flight competition that she has yet to face. Bud seems like the perfect sort of fighter to fast track you without fast tracking you. Why not? This sounds fun. I still say Julia Budd should win this, like with the experience. She won't be that outsized. I think Julia Budd wins this one.
And one.
Yeah, there we go. All right. So, Dennis, I'm gonna throw one your way. Did the UFC do Betch Correia dirty by pairing her with Carol Rosa in her quote unquote retirement fight?
Well, I'm gonna answer this another yes and no. So, in the sense of no, they didn't particularly like choose like Betch Correia say, okay, we don't like you, we're gonna do you dirty and give you someone that you can't beat. Because the thing is, the UFC does that to everyone, especially semi-name. She's like a semi-name, right? But they'll do that to any name where they're like, okay, how can we use you up before we toss you away and get you to lose to an up-and-coming fighter? And so I think that's exactly what they did to her.
Oh, very, very good answer. I mean, how dare they treat a pioneer and legend like Betch Correia that way? Good Lord. They were throwing that
Brazilian women's MMA on the map, boys.
I mean, they threw that word out there so much. I mean, you got to love it. Jay, I'm going to throw one in your direction now, sir. Is Casey O'Neill going to get fast-tracked at flyweight after beating the champ's sister?
She is, and that breaks my heart because this is not the kind of performance that makes you go, okay, she's ready for contention. She's ready to go for the top ladder. She beat not top 15 Antonina Shevchenko, And this is going to catapult her into top competition, and Valentina is going to want that win. So Casey O'Neal's got a target on her back now, and she's 8-0, and this is a tough division to be that in, because then she's probably going to fight Jennifer Maia. And then Valentina, good luck with that.
All right. Good answers, gentlemen. That was a very, very well done, tight segment right there. I'm so proud of the panel this week. Now it's time to move on to perhaps the greatest titled segment in all of media history. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not over the course of the past week. Jay, I'm going to start with you. What is your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Do you guys remember about, this was coming up on 10 years ago, probably, where there was a UFC event that I can't seem to place that was a bad event that Dana White apologized to the fans and said he'd make it right and do them justice. Was it the Faber Barao card, or I don't remember exactly.
He's done that a couple of times. It was Faber Barao was one of them, and then
for some reason,
Silva
like UFC
and
120, 121, Silva Leites, that kind of thing. Anyways, this is dating ourselves. Well, Dana appears to be wanting to make it right in 2021. Now, whether they're related, I don't care. UFC 267, which is happening on October 30th, which is a Saturday on Halloween weekend, is going to be putting on a 2 title fight card in Abu Dhabi. And here's the catch. It's not a catch unless Ant Walker has to wake up at 7 a.m. to watch these fights, because the event starts in the morning. 10 a.m. prelims on the East Coast, 2 p.m. main card, 6-fight main card. A lot of really fun fights on this card, and it's free to y'all that have ESPN Plus. There's no $70 surcharge or anything like that. As long as you're ready to get up early, Papa Dana is giving everybody a Halloween present. And here's why it's actually okay. If they'd put it on Halloween night and they made it free, what an evil move, because you're keeping people to stay inside to watch a pay-per-view. But it's going to be done by 4:30 on the East Coast, maybe 5 o'clock, depending on how slow things go. So you can close your wallets for UFC 267, boys and girls, because you got yourselves a free card through ESPN Plus.
I mean, that was such welcome news, because one, I'm really cheap, and two, like, it's Halloween, and like my wife wants to get the kids dressed up and stuff, and take the kids out to like a pumpkin patch or something like that, and I can actually watch the fights and still take care of my family. It's this remarkable thing that happens every so often where I can do both. I'm really excited.
I'm surprised, Mr. Falcons.
I'm very surprised, Mr. Falcons. Dennis, what is your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
I mean, just to comment a little bit about that. Yeah, it's a pretty stacked card. It's not like one of those. Remember when they used to give away like a lot of Demetrius Johnson pay-per-views, right? They'd be like, oh, well, he's not that big of a star. Here you go. Watch this for free. This one's actually pretty stacked. For mine was the Dan Hooker taking the Islam Makhachev fight. I mean, this is less than a month after his win. It's not like it's like some easy. I mean, this guy is like, they're targeting him to be like the next champion, and he wants to take him in less than a month. Hooker's that type of fighter, and then two, I think he just doesn't want to go through the quarantine again and all that stuff going on with New Zealand and how Kick City, what is it? City Kickboxing? How what is it? City Kickboxing. City Kickboxing is moving to the U.S. So might as well go take this fight, and maybe by the time he's done, they'll be all moved over to the U.S. and he just goes back, So I was surprised that he took that fight, but that's the type of guy he is.
And a funny thing too, like good friend of the show, Oscar Willis of the Mac Life, asked Dan Hooker about potentially taking that fight, and like he like shot down the ideas, like, no, he's not taking that fight right now. And then like the very next day he takes the fight and then has like some interview with Oscar where we're saying, I took the fight, like, I said exactly what I said I wouldn't do, like I did exactly the opposite. So pretty funny stuff there. My I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moments comes courtesy of a gentleman who we did talk about briefly on the show already, one Kevin Holland, who, in addition to defying the athletic commission and somehow or another bringing together the forces of the UFC and Nevada to form this Chaudhry-like transformer being. He left the Apex Center only to find himself Batman. This man thwarted a car theft, literally chased the guy, like chased him down, called his coach in the middle of the chase, and then chased the guy on foot, had him hemmed up and ready to go for the cops. Kevin Holland has had an interesting 72 hours. So, I mean, it's just a cool story. It's funny, it's entertaining and all that, but let's not try this at home, people. All right. I have, I'll just share briefly a story of the guy that I used to train for his MMA fights. He called me one day talking about some crazy stuff he got into. It was a shoplifter or something at CVS, and he like chased the guy down and beat him up and or pinned him down or whatever. And he took pictures, like he took pictures of the guy after he had him pinned to the ground, and you see like his shoe on the guy's neck and the guy's face all bloodied up. And he's like, "See, look what I did." It was a funny story. Yeah, you beat up a criminal. But come on now. The guy pulled out a gun, the guy pulled out the knife or something. Your life is permanently affected by something that was just totally unnecessary. It's a piece of property. Let it go. And it ain't your job, fam.
What did he steal? A candy bar or something?
I don't know. I don't know what he stole.
There's not a lot of heavy, big ticket items at CVS.
Yeah, it's not like he like took the safe or something. And if he took the safe, would have like $50 in it and some Motrin. I don't know. So yeah, just don't be Batman.
Yeah. Here's my bonus about why I enjoyed that story so much. Because he hit a scarf hold on the guy that I'm pretty sure he learned from Alejandro Perez who did that on the prelims for the first scarf hold arm lock in UFC history. So that's something.
Also, remember John Jones was had that
sure did
similar story. Maybe Kevin Holland hopes he has that fight career trajectory, but not the outside of his fighting career trajectory.
Yeah, like Jones like stopped a crime and evolved to become the criminal. So yeah, it's
what
like
is
the Phoenix Jones thing.
Live long enough to be Phoenix Jones and the hey, you mentioned something when you said trajectory, Dennis. I was thinking about this and I was talking over this with Ben Duffy the other night. So Kevin Holland has had a lot of unusual things happen in the span. Big, long win streak of fights, very active, name, beloved fan favorite, got some good skills, has very glaring weaknesses when he gets to the top level. And now he has oddball results like Clash of Heads. Is he following like an abbreviated career of Donald Cerrone right now?
Well, yeah, possible. I'm trying to think of who else it's like as well. But yeah,
you know what? I'll say Jim Miller has had a low-key Donald Cerrone career. Fights anybody, anytime. He's incredibly active and has all sorts of life-threatening things happening, and you never hear about
fighting Lyme disease while he's fighting a guy.
Yeah, but Kevin Holland is probably the most high-profile like Cerrone update. I mean, he's the crazy thing about him too is like this. If it was a loss and he lost an appeal and all that, and he didn't get this no contest, it really doesn't matter for his career. Like it doesn't matter at all. Right. He's a guy like he just lost 2 main events in a row, like lost badly too. Got outclassed 2 consecutive main events, and it doesn't matter. This guy's right back on the horse, and he's right back at it. He's doing the same things. He's chatting with the commentators as he's fighting. Like this is a guy who's completely unfazed by it all and wants to remain active. So, I mean, this. If there's anybody who's Teflon when it comes to a loss, it would be Kevin Holland.
Yeah, so it's very I would agree. Similar to Cerrone, right?
I was gonna say that
fight multiple times. Yep. Doesn't matter if he wins or loses. People like him, and that's kind of the it's not a bad career to have.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. If you're not winning a title.
And Dana used to trash him, but he loves Kevin Holland. He's the kind of guy he said, man, he's a gamer, man. He'll take any fight. Dana has grown to like Kevin Holland in a way. And I think Ant, you nailed it about as hard as you can nail it. It doesn't matter if he had lost. He's the kind of guy now where he could lose 5 in a row and people wouldn't really be that worried about his standing on the roster.
You're still going to watch him. Like that's the thing. I and as far as like Dana liking Kevin Holland now, I mean, I think there are two main reasons for that. One, because this is a guy who has revealed to toe the company line. I mean, this is someone who is like, hey, just stay active, and and they give you fights and you get paid because you keep fighting. Yeah, like Donald Cerrone. But also too, like Kevin Holland, I mean, we know this personality wise, like he's a really charming dude. Like I talked with him before his UFC debut, actually, when he fought Thiago Santos in LA, and like he's just a really cool guy to talk to. And I'm now, we can definitely question some of the things that he puts out on social media sometimes, and like we can with all fighters, but just a one-on-one conversation. I find it very difficult to believe that Dana can sit across from this guy on a consistent basis and not have an affinity toward him, because he's really like he's really a charming guy. Like it's hard not to like Kevin Holland when you actually talk to him. So all right, fellas, we're gonna keep things pushing here. I mean, this was something that was worthy of an I'm not surprised, but it's worthy of more little thorough discussion. We got a few minutes left, so we can go ahead and give this a little bit of love. Aljamain Sterling, as we said last week, out of the fight against Petr Yan to defend the bantamweight title. Now Petr Yan finds himself across from Corey Sandhagen in Abu Dhabi for an interim strap. How do we feel about this? Aljo has had the belt for what, like 6 months, maybe? And we're talking interim. What's going on, gentlemen?
I hate it. I hate it so much. I do not like this path of something happens to a champion and they may not be the most popular, or they may not have towed the company line completely. So let's not take their title, but let's put their title up for dispute, which is, you can no longer call Aljamain Sterling the undisputed champion of the world come October 30th because there's an interim champion. I hate it. I hate everything about it. Look, if Aljo Sterling had done something, or I don't know, okay, let's play the Donald Cerrone game. Let's say he got motorcycle handlebars impaled through his chest, like which happened to Cerrone one time. Okay, you brought that upon yourself. You've knocked yourself out of a fight. Okay, let's trash on you. Or you're out for 2 years. Hey, Dominic Cruz, let's get your belt, whatever. This is a guy who the UFC medical professionals and the commission officials that were reviewing him said, this guy's neck is not good. This guy has some recovery that still needs to be done. He can't fight in, a month, because, what'll happen, snap, boom, and then game over, man. We don't want one of those unfortunate incidents. So the UFC is putting together a title fight between a guy who lost his last fight and a guy who lost his last fight. Oh my God. Why? I get it. I like Petr Yan. He's exciting. He would have probably won the fight against Aljo Sterling, but for the disqualification. Oh, that's right. There was a disqualification. Corey Sandhagen lost to TJ Dillashaw. He lost the fight. It was a close fight, but he still lost. Under the 2 of the 3 official judges, I believe it was a split decision, right? Said that he lost the fight. He lost the fight. That means, so now we're going to have Yoel Romero's cropping up all over the division, or Jose Aldo. Like, I'm almost surprised that Jose Aldo didn't get the call. I swear to God. And I talk about this with Tom Feely and occasionally with Marcel Dorff, that sometimes the UFC has a pattern they follow in putting cards together and matchmaking in billing events. And then they just drop kick the house of cards and this happens. And maybe Dennis, maybe you can talk me off this ledge. Maybe Petr Yan's an awesome fight against Corey Sandhagen, but I don't dig it. Am I crazy, Dennis?
Well, I mean, for me, I don't mind it because in my mind, like, okay, Petr Yan to me was, he was winning that fight. I mean, they really need to change the rule set in terms of those DQs and turning those things into no contests. So I feel like, let's pretend that fight didn't happen and Petr Yan is still champ. And then in my mind, I had Sandhagen beating TJ Dillashaw. So I feel like this is for the real title. I know interim titles are kind of a joke in the UFC where they kind of just make them up, just to like sell pay-per-views and whatnot. So in that regards, I'm glad they're fighting. You know, I do think it's two of the best guys in the division. I mean, I know Aljo has. I guess the thing is if they fight and no matter who wins, it's still a great next fight for Aljo because you got Sandhagen, who he beat, right? He already beat him, so it'd be a rematch. But Sandhagen has at least looked a lot better in his last few fights. And then Peter Yan was someone he was losing to, but then he got DQ'd. So either way, whoever he's fighting, I think is going to be an interesting matchup.
You know what? Dennis, I think you definitely touched on a few things that are making all the sense in the world. Like, you are speaking the same thing that a lot of other people are talking right now. Like, they think Sandhagen should have won against Dillashaw, and Peter Yan was beating Aljo anyway. So yeah, put this fight together. Matchmaking is always a subjective thing. But this is dangerously subjective, in my opinion. Like, it's almost like I'll touch on your other world, Dennis. Like, this is Warner Brothers responding to criticism of BVS. And changing the Justice League movie while it's filming. This, where it's like, hey, just let the natural thing take its course here. I say that the fight between Aldo and Rob Font, which is marvelous matchmaking, which is spectacular, this should be the interim title fight if you must have an interim title on the line, because these are two gentlemen that are on win streaks. And one thing I like to see in my title challengers is win streaks.
It's so crazy of a concept.
It's wild. It's wild, especially when Rob Font just went and styled on the former champion in Cody Garbrandt. Jose Aldo just styled on Pedro Munoz and halted the momentum of a surging Marlon Vera. This just makes way too much sense. And you want to throw Aldo in a bunch of title shots anyway. Hey, I think the previous ones didn't make sense. The previous title fight didn't make sense for him. This one does make sense. Like, you actually have legitimate cause to throw him in a title fight. Throw him in a title fight this time.
I think a Font versus Yan would probably make more sense, just because, remember, Aldo already just got beat up by Yan beforehand, so I don't think they want to do that again. Sandhagen is probably just more popular than Font, so that's why they threw him in there. But yeah, you could have done a Yan versus Font, and that would have been for the interim title. I just feel like it was a fight they wanted to make, Yan versus Sandhagen, right? Yeah. In the meantime, while Aljo was resting up and getting healed, they just slapped that title on there just because. That's right. The fight, I think, was going to be made anyways, and they're like, hey, why not? Let's throw that interim thing on there so we can put the belts on the poster and all that good stuff. So. Yeah,
makes total sense. Dennis, you're speaking too much logic here. I like to go off of emotion.
Well, I speak the business perspective of how they think.
So. Yeah, we don't do facts here on the Walkout Network. All right. Well, Jay does facts. I just talk. All right. So, fellas, the UFC, of course, is still in action this weekend. We've got a main event between Mackenzie Dern and Marina Rodriguez. Is this like the best main event in UFC history, fellas?
Well, let's ask our vacationing Ben Duffy. Ben, how are you feeling about this main event on Saturday?
It's like, oh, you can't hear us over you sipping Mai Tais on the beach
and laughing from where you are. Man, this event, dude. This is the preeminent filler card. This is we have to get 42 fights on here. What is a title? What is a fight that has top ranked fighters? And I do pauses like Jeff Goldblum, because I'm trying to think. I think they're both top 10 strawweights. But here's the problem. I work as an editor for SureDog.com. I am part of the rankings process. I write articles and events, and I cover every event live. If I'm struggling to remember these women's place in their division, do you think this is a card that can be sold to a casual watcher? And maybe they're going to go the Mackenzie Dern Instagram. Oh, wait, they can't because Instagram's dead. But this is just, this whole card is really tough. And I like fighters on it. I like Charles Rosa. I'm going to like him because of obviously his style and Boston Strong. What up? Alexander Romanov may very well pick up and throw Jared Vanderaa out of the cage. But just in terms of pure entertainment and matchmaking, Ben, you picked the right week to go on vacation, buddy.
Yeah. So I guess one thing we can get into, like, we're not even going to go to the fights that we're looking forward to on this card. Instead, let's highlight a fighter that we're interested in on this card. I'll begin here. For better or worse, I'm interested to see what Deron Winn has to offer. I'm just such a sucker for a Deron Winn fight, no matter how bad it may turn out, no matter how much he may not have lived up to the expectations that were thrust upon him when he became the lone standout on that abysmal Golden Boy MMA card.
It's more like chest high standout, though.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm a sucker for a Deron Winn fight. What do you guys? Who are you looking forward to seeing on this card?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. You guys are, much more knowledgeable and hardcore than me. I only recognize a handful of names on this card. So if you're talking like me, like I'm more into MMA than a casual, but I'm not like a hardcore fan. So when I look at it, I'm like, okay, I know that name. I know that name. And then, it's the opposite of the upcoming Halloween card, right? That card is stacked. This thing has like nothing really. Yeah, I know Mackenzie Dern. I know, I know Deron Winn. But like Tim Elliott. But like overall, it's just like I don't know who most of these people are, and that's the thing is like, even though this is not the WWE, you do need to be invested into quote unquote characters, right? I mean, these are real people, but you just have to be, because otherwise you don't care if they either have to have a fighting style that is very entertaining, or you have to be into them as a person. I mean, let's face it, like Chael Sonnen never really had an entertaining fighting style, right? But he was great on the mic, and he knew the right things to say, so you will watch it for that. In this case, I just don't know much. I guess Mackenzie Dern, just to see kind of where she's at, at this point. I mean, they're really trying to push her to be, one of the stars in the women's division. She only has one loss, so just see where she's at now.
I mean, this is Saturday Night Contender Series. Like that's what this event is, with a charitable top 10 matchup that they were able to put together. Looking through the rankings, I think Tim Elliott has fallen upwards into a top 10 rankings in the flyweight division because he has won his last two fights, but they were against two gentlemen who I don't believe are in the UFC anymore. So there's that. I think for maybe, I don't want to say Schadenfreude, but just in terms of, I want to see what's about to happen. I want to see how Maria Agapova comes back from that utterly humiliating loss and one of the biggest upsets in company history, when she took the first round against Shayna Dobson and ran out of gas worse than we've seen pretty much anybody say, like, other than, I don't know, Rodolfo Vieira in the past 10 years in terms of pure ultimate gassing. I want to see how she comes back from that, because she's just a kid. Like, she's 24. And she had that kind of performance where 5 minutes and then she's cooked at 125 pounds, which is historically and statistically a division of fighters that can fight longer than 4.5 minutes. I want to see if she actually will be able to come back. But I think that Sabina Mazo is going to kick her in the head and rain on that parade. But it's just from entertainment purposes. I want to see her mean mug to the camera and do her weird little dance that she does, and then fight somebody who's going to walk her down and kick her in the face. So I want to see that comeback performance.
I think the biggest appeal of this card is the start time, 1 p.m. on the East Coast. This is not a card that's going to be worth you, skipping Saturday night plans to watch. Like this is not, as a fight fan, as a diehard fight fan, you find yourself isolating yourself a lot from family and friends on the weekends. this ain't the time to do that. This is you could watch this earlier, especially on the West Coast. Like this is going to be on in the morning. You know, hopefully my daughter's not screaming the whole time and I can watch some of it, and then I'll do some family stuff and I'll feel like a complete whole person and like well-rounded and not just engulfed in this circus that I keep coming back to week in and week out. Fellas, I think that's going to do it for this edition of Unleashed.
If I could,
Yeah,
throw one thing in here,
absolutely.
I'm glad you reminded me of the early start time. Do you remember about 5 years ago when Bellator and Ryzen hooked up, and they hosted a show called Breakfast with Fedor, and they showed a few Ryzen fights, including Fedor fighting Satish.
Satoshi.
Yeah. Anyways, the guy who he was supposed to beat and beat really, really badly, Ranjit Sang. So, anyways. And they show that early fight, and you went, it's over. And I watched the fights, and I'm able to do my business. I hope we're done by 6:30, and we can go about our business and fall down.
Absolutely,
that's your call, Ant.
I love that. So I'm gonna spike my coffee and hang out. So that'll be that. All right, gentlemen, this is gonna do it for this edition of Unleashed. Big thanks to Dennis for jumping on the show. Been a great time catching up with you. Hopefully we get to do it again soon. You can find his work on Collider. Jay, you can catch him on Sherdog.com. You won't catch Ben on Sherdog.com this week because he is on vacation, a well-earned vacation. Ben, enjoy yourself. And you can find me on MMA On Point. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Stay beautiful, stay positive, and stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.